Hello, my friends. All right, so next week we'll do the full hour on compression. We'll sort of catch up on a bunch of stuff this week. I didn't quite have time. To do all of the research I wanted to do for a full compression episode because I really wanted to do it justice. I feel like the full hour episodes have been something that people are finding a lot of value in. So I'm going to do a little bit more research for those hours going forward. So we'll do compression next week. Come check out the Discord. Give us feedback, send messages. It's been a lot of fun on the Discord chatting with people. I'm going to bring Jon on right now. Didn't show up for. Oh, there we go.
There we go. That took a minute.
Yeah. Maybe it's the new update where they add all types of extra. You can put more people on and all that kind of stuff, which, by the way, we should do soon. We should.
Yo, so wild. So I was so bummed. I was like, oh, we got to do a whole hour on compression. I don't want to do this. And then I'm reading about compression. And then 12 minutes in, I see your Instagram say next week. I'm like, fuck, what am I doing? I don't want to talk about compression today.
But we'll talk about it next week. And your valuable insight will be appreciated by all.
Whatever.
Well,
before then, I'm going to write a book. I already got the title. So I'll write the book on compression before next week.
Is it called I Hate Compression, a memoir by Jon Castelli?
It's not, but that was a working title.
Title, okay. Well, as we've talked about, one of the big things we will talk about next week is the difference between compression and compressors. Because, of course, compression is a concept. A compressor is a tool that has some historical importance that perhaps is not nearly as important as it used to be, since there are other techniques to manipulate dynamic range. But we will get into all of that
I can't wait. Nothing makes me more excited than to talk about compression.
Yeah, but you love talking about dynamic. We're not getting into it right now. I just feel like we'll just launch into it. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah. Chilling. Coming out of a bit of a celebratory week for the 35th birthday.
Post birthday. Happy belated, as always, and again.
Thank you. A lot of champagne was ingested, so my liver is trying to come back to normal.
Do you have post alcohol celebration tactics or remedies for getting back to full health, given that you're such a health guy and a fitness guy?
Trying not to drink, even though I had more champagne last night. It's kind
of more alcohol is not the solution, is what you're saying. Hair of the dog doesn't actually.
Talon, who just commented there, took me to dinner last night and bought a bottle of champagne. So it still hasn't ended. But electrolytes, some good magnesium, potassium, and salt. I've got a rowing machine for my birthday for myself as a gift. So I've been rowing every morning. At least 30 minutes, trying to get upwards of an hour in what is known as zone 2 training. So kind of moderate heart rate, sustaining for a long period of time, between 30 minutes and an hour.
Sustained cardiovascular things rather than sprinting or walking.
Yeah, it's like 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. So you kind of do, I think it's 180 minus your age, I think, is kind of like where you get.
So you got to do math.
There's different opinions. You do a little math. Anyway, so I'm kind of doing that. That helps. So this morning, woke up, went for a walk with a walking meditation from David White on the Waking Up, the Consolations course that he did. Kind of do a walking meditation today just to get out after the alcohol. Didn't do a seated one yet. Might do that a little later. And then jumped on the rower, then did some stretches, my physical therapy stretches that I've been doing. So, that helps. A lot of water, espresso.
And have you been, there's a couple of things to talk about there. One, I was going to say on the meditation tip, I did one of the other waking up courses with the lady about the awareness meditation. There's there were 7 or 8 of them. I thought that was really great on the Waking Up
Very good.
app. For those of you that are using the Waking Up app. And if you're not, and you want a meditation app, we like that one. Obviously, Headspace and other ones are good too. And if you can't afford it, you can email the Waking Up folks, and they will give you a free year subscription that you can renew if you have financial hardship every year. The part of the mission of that is to make it available to everyone, regardless of whether you can afford it or not. So, highly recommend that, and all kinds of different stuff. It's funny, I got it for my mom for her birthday like 2 years ago, and she used it for a while and liked it, but kind of found the Sam Harris approach, which is very cerebral and very, look for the looker and think of yourself without a head, and like it's a lot of more conceptual stuff kind of turned her off. But then when she found some of the other meditation courses on the app and some of the other teachers, she started to like it a lot more. So that's one of the things that's great about the app is you can pursue a lot of different things.
I like the David White approach that Sam and David talk in their latest conversation, both on the podcast and on the app, which the more spoken word conceptual practices, and David White comes from a poetry philosopher background versus a philosopher poetry background, and he talks about it being words that otherwise express circumstances that you couldn't express with your own words. So then you can find kind of aloneness and solitude in someone else's words and let them transpire. And it's another form of meditation. Like it's not the sit and listen to the breath. It's sit and listen to words that make me feel something that I can't express by myself. It's like listening to a great song, a lyric and a verse that it just encapsulates everything you've been feeling that you can't put into words. That's not your skill. And that's definitely not my skill. So I highly relate to the listening to David White talk, and he says things in ways that I feel and things that I crave that I don't even understand how to put to words. So that's another form of meditation. So I understand why people would like that one versus the super focused on breath, or, my favorite is focus on a sound. Because, being an auditory person.
Same. I love sound-based guided meditations.
When he's talking about bringing a sound into, like, I'm in my loft and, a car drives by, and because of the way the concrete walls are parallel, on the street that I'm on, cars are very loud and echoey, and I'll just wait for the whole car to go, and then I could feel it, hear it turn the corner, and then what's the next thing that's going to come? Like, we can't choose our next thought. We can't choose our next sound that we hear. We can't choose. Well, David White actually said something interesting in one of the we actually don't know or understand more than 50% of what happens in our body. I always thought it was upwards of 80 to 90%.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah, we get the privilege of witnessing a internally formed reality externally for 10% of the time, if that. I find that a privilege that we actually have access to a reality that the book I was reading this morning kind of describes, like the difference between physical and chemical reality and social reality. Like social reality is like money and stories and political leaders that we've chosen through voting processes, and we all have come to a general consensus on how to behave. And then there's moral spectrums within that, but that's not physics and it's not chemistry. It's not biological. It's social.
I like what you're saying about it's a big part of my meditations too. Sound is obviously a huge part of both of our lives. And when I do either guided meditations that tell you, okay, listen for sounds, listen to how you have no control over them, they come and go, observe them, and translating that to other things in life is really interesting. And I also love how that translates to making records, which is so much of our job, whether you are a producer, mixer, some sort of engineer, that so much is about being able to go back and forth between the micro and the macro. Like, is that hi-hat, does it have the right high end? Should I filter it slightly? Do I need to? And then to very quickly go, how does this whole thing feel? Yeah. And it's a process of doing that over and over again. I actually found meditation hugely helpful for that.
Hugely. To me, it helps, just to piggyback off that, because that I completely agree there. The ability as a mix engineer or a producer, depending on where we're at in the process of leaving things alone. This space that we're into right now, this live on Instagram is quickly like caught on, and everybody's doing everything. Like everyone's really, the space is already loud. Not as loud as some other spaces, maybe not as loud as nutrition or fitness. Exactly. Like those are super loud on the internet, and audio engineering is just getting louder in our community, which is nice. Yeah. So I was like, I wanted to post something yesterday on Instagram and I just didn't. But what I wanted to post was, yo, look what I did to the bass. And there's just nothing on the bass, and the bass sounds so good. Like I didn't do anything, but like I did something because I got other things out of the way of the bass. Like there's another way in, and that comes with meditation. That comes with, I want to leave it alone. Like, why do I have to touch that? Like, I want to leave people alone. I was, like I said, at dinner last night with my homie Talon, And, you know, we go back like 16, 17 years or something, maybe even 18. Like I've known him. He was my first, what I refer to as my first out of state client. He found me through a project they did on Long Island. He was from Pennsylvania and he drove to Pennsylvania. He slept at the studio for a week or two. And, you know, my dad let that happen. And we were just like, we were in for 2 weeks. It's the first time someone did that. So to me, that's a monumental like occurrence in my life. And we went to, but one of the things that he said to me, and I kind of try with my life, is I just want to let people be. Like I want to leave them alone as much as I can. And it's a non-judgmental way of existing in the world. And granted, I'm critical. I judge art. I judge, you know, I'm like constantly like, oh, I could probably do that better. But it's not to downplay something else. It's just like a competitive nature of myself to be there. But it's non-judgmental. It's perceptive. It's listening. It's seeing. And you know, the minute I start criticizing, like I feel gross. Like it just I have adverse feelings to it, and it is a natural part of me too. And I'm like I struggle with that. But one of the reasons that Talon and I were talking about is Talon's weird. Talon's like a one of a kind. You know, there's nobody like this dude. And he's just so comfortable around me because every time he does his weird shit, I'm just like, more of that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And that's what it's like to be a great producer in the room. It's like, give me more of the weird shit. Like, give it to me. You know, anyway, so that's just
that's one of those interesting things about what we do is that the more you do it, the more you get used to the habits that most people have, or like, you know, when you do a lot of who's in the comments there. Awkward peanut. I'm an awkward peanut is a great way to put it. He's not someone I know, but now I really want to meet him. You know, when you do a lot of songwriting sessions, people start to write the same songs over and over and over. And then what you realize is that the people who are doing something weird and interesting that you can't quite put together and the song isn't quite coming, but there's something interesting, those are always the best sessions when something doesn't seem to make sense. And I think a lot of people make attempts to do that, probably with a positive intent, like let's do something weird, but people conflate being like, oh, we're just going to do some weird chords, which can potentially screw up a good song, with someone actually having something in their heart that's very different and strange. And it's a really interesting part of the process. I love that too. I love, you know, many of my best friends are much stranger than me. I live a very normal life by comparison to a lot of my friends, which are mostly not music people, but
sure. Yeah.
We got a bunch of questions this week, and I grabbed some questions from previous weeks that I thought were good that we never got to. One question that came up from a couple of people, Jordan and a few others, just thoughts on the Grammys.
I was hoping that would come up.
Yeah, let's chat about it. I mean, well, you can go first if you like, and you know, you are a Grammy nominated in the past, a Grammy nominated engineer, and
this is a good. My homie Dennis Koziak was doing like the Instagram poll, like asking questions, asking thoughtful questions.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
Should someone that I wish I actually screenshotted all of them because they were really great questions. They were hard questions. Like one of the questions was, if someone touched an album, if someone touched an album, like, should you get an award for it? And I think, fuck yes. And there's nobody that is doing that's too extreme. Okay. It's very rare that one person is producing a whole album or touches everything on an album.
Yeah, certainly.
9 out of 10 times it's not happening.
Yeah.
So if you worked on, like, that's to say someone, let's use, I don't know, let's use Ricky Reed. Let's use like a really successful producer, produces the single on a record that's up for album of the year, but he only produced the single, but the album sold, the single sold more copies, touched more people's lives than the whole album. Yeah. He doesn't get a Grammy for working on the album, but the single did better. I don't know. It just seems like a person like that that had that impact on the success of the album because of the single deserves it. OG Volta disagrees with that. I'm really curious. I'll hit him.
Yeah,
off.
let me go all Socratic on it. Let me just ask questions and see where you go with it, because I have sort of a whole different perspective on the whole thing, which I can go into in a bit, because the Grammys I have a different perspective on the Grammys, I think, than a lot of people. But do you think so? There's an argument. I saw some people posting that everybody, you get rid of the 33% rule. You have to work on a certain amount of the album in order to get a Grammy.
Yeah, it used to be 51, now it's 33.
Yeah, so let's look at like, I don't know, a pop album like Dua Lipa or one of these, that wins album of the year. Is it every songwriter, producer, engineer, musician? Like what is in your mind, not that you have to stick to it, just, sort of thought experiments, who gets a Grammy? If I recorded a couple of vocals on a demo that ended up on the album that wins the Grammy for album of the year, do I get a Grammy?
I'm corrected by OG Volta there. You're judging an album. There's a singles category for that. That's very true. I don't think I went through the full example of that, but the success of the album, I'm halfway between it. I don't fully agree with what you're saying, Raul.
Look, the truth is this stuff is hard. And maybe we can get into the details of what you think. This is why I'm happy. This is what I think right now. I may think differently in a year. I may think differently tomorrow. I've felt this way for a while. I think trophies for art is dumb.
Okay. Well, if you want to talk about downstream view of this whole thing, yeah, of course.
And so I'm obviously when you get nominated for Grammy, when my friends win Grammys, I'm very happy for them because it makes them happy. There's a lot of exclusion in these things. It's all just a political club. It's self-congratulatory. There's also a lot of great things that the Grammy Foundation does that's aside from giving the awards. It's a complicated thing that isn't like the Grammys, yes, the Grammys, no, they're doing this right, they're doing this wrong. But I think for a lot of people, it's the idea of making things competitive and making secret ballots to say who gets a trophy. It's not really
the secret ballot thing is really weird.
And then so what do? Do you make it to give everybody a vote, but it's like only professionals, but you have to
I think voting members, I think you need to have a certain credibility.
Yeah, but that's like within the industry based on their it's hard. It's hard. There's no good way.
Well, the vote. I mean, I've never thought about this part, but the votes matter from people that understand what it means to make a record, right? So like if the criteria is you need to have been a part of 5 commercially released records and you pay a fee of a whatever membership, I don't see that as a negative. I don't see having worked on records as a reason not to be a voting member. And I also don't see, if you've never worked in the industry, that you should be able to vote for it. So that's what the fan-based awards are for.
So what's the idea? So the idea is then we are going to give, I don't know the answer to this. So let's talk about it. So the idea of the Grammys is we are going to create an organization of professionals. I should really have someone who's been part of the Grammy board foundation for a long time.
They'll chime in. We're making records.
I just spent the whole weekend with a guy who's on the Grammy board for years, and I've talked to him a little bit about it. They're in a tough position because they do represent the music industry, and I guess the idea is basically this is a group of professionals. We can honor the people that achieve excellence in our art form. That's the idea anyway. I think that's a nice idea. But it's just so hard for these things not to just become political, and people are over-recognized and under-recognized, and it becomes a political popularity contest. And I don't know. We've got sales and numbers, and
it seems like a very narrow view of it.
Expand it for me.
I expect people to want to celebrate milestones, like in every step of the way. So,
but we have those. We have charts. We have sales. We have
the same thing. It's the same thing.
We have fan awards. We have all
it's
kinds
another
of
version of it. They're all the same thing, is what I mean. So it's just another thing to tip your hat to others and yourself for. Right?
It's just exclusionary to me.
So the Tour de France is exclusionary too. Like
sport is a very different thing, because
MMA fights are exclusionary.
This is a very good point, because sport is although there's, corruption and there's faults with these systems, sport is a meritocracy based on athletic ability. Like, the guy who wins the Tour de France isn't the best friend of the guy who won it 2 years ago,
right?
And has no talent.
Neither should music be, but that doesn't. You can't blame that on the Grammys as a whole, right? That's not.
The system of it is different. It's a subjective thing. Art is subjective, whereas athleticism, at least philosophically, is an objective thing. You either, LeBron James is just better than everyone else. He didn't have the political relationships and a secret ballot.
Yes,
to win an NBA championship.
Again, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Of course. By the way, I sort of am too, because I love seeing friends do well and get accolades and all that. So I'm not.
The Grammys are supposed to. They don't all the time, and there's already heat in the thread about The Weeknd. It's supposed to honor the success of artists, their charts, the time they've spent on charts, the way that they've impacted people. Platforms that they've crossed from film to TV to liner notes. Like there's all different levels. So it's supposed to be a meritocracy. You're not just going to.
But it's not. It's literally not that. It's literally not a meritocracy. Meritocracy is charts. We have charts. We have and we have public votes and represented that way.
But it's not.
I think it's actually by definition, it's not a meritocracy, because the idea is, I think, and now I'm going to argue the other side, because it's always important to argue all these sides. The idea is you put the Grammy voting in the hands of people who are experts and really know their craft. It's like Esperanza Spalding, who won Best New Artist a number of years ago. It might have been the same year as Justin Bieber. It could have been somebody else, but like there were big pop artists, but she, who's a classically trained and jazz bass player, amazing vocalist, but didn't sell any records, but won Best New Artist, was recognized by a group of her peers. So even though she didn't sell the most things and didn't have the highest profile, it was deemed by that group that she had excellence that was under-recognized. And so there is something about a group of music people who are experts and who are involved with it, recognizing people that the public might not necessarily, it's an award from, it's self-congratulatory, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the idea that the experts get to go, hey, we're recognizing excellence even though it hasn't got its due, is a really nice idea. So conceptually, there's something, but it's literally not a meritocracy. It's not who sold the most or who had the most impact by any other measures.
So my question in response to that would be, if we get rid of the Grammys, do people make records for different or better reasons? Thank you, Spider. Yeah, different kind of merit. There's merit to get to that podium. The podium is just bigger, and then the people vote. Yeah. For who stands at the top of the podium at the end. That's why it's art, because it's subjective.
Yeah,
it is people.
Yeah, what are you saying? People generally, the people who are members, qualified members. Yeah.
Let's just jump out of that. So, if they go away, what's better about it? What's better about not having an Oscars or an Emmys for music? Like, how does this do good for the community?
I don't know that I'm actually making an argument that it should go away.
I just want to talk about it. I don't think it should. And I definitely don't think it should.
So if the Grammys went away, what would that do? It would just put emphasis. I mean, people naturally want to give each other awards for things. Like it's not some abnormal, awful thing. And so I just think it would probably just emphasize all of the other award ceremonies that exist. But if all awards went away, I don't know, just human beings naturally do this. This is one of those, like, we're not going to solve anything. I think the idea of more inclusion feels like a good idea, but then you can't just take it away from the people who are making the decisions, who are the supposed experts and professionals, because that's sort of the point of the whole thing. So I don't know. I mean, it's like, they've made a really intense effort to think about the underrepresentation historically of black artists. I mean, people like, Tupac and Biggie and Snoop, none of those people have ever won Grammys, which is crazy to me, but also that's not how the system's set up. So what does that mean?
I'd be curious about this year.
So they
seemed like that changed this year.
It changed, but all of a sudden it's also become very political. 1 year. Yeah, it's 1 year, and it's a very political year, and it's a very strange year, and we didn't even have a real ceremony. It was like it's a new art director, and it's all I don't know. I don't have large opinions about it. It turns out, actually, just because I didn't watch it. I mean, I watched a couple performances after because I wanted to see how well Bruno Mars would sing and the things that people were talking about. I'll check out on YouTube, but I just,
No, it was the worst Grammys to watch. I mean, it was fucking awful.
Was it really? I didn't.
Yeah, it was awful. I watched the entirety of it. But the next day, what I wanted to bring it back to is let's take self-congratulatory out of the picture. The community on Instagram in producer and audio and pro audio world was large yesterday or the day after. Everyone was like, congratulations everyone on this and so. And without that once a year, everyone seeing what everybody did and recognizing. Yeah,
there's a lot of value in that.
There's a lot of value in the community aspect of it. Going there, like I went last year for the first and maybe only time that we'll ever go to a Grammy.
I'm sure you got more coming. Well,
no. Who knows what the event is going to be like, what the invites are going to be like. And, people just coming up to you at the Staples Center being like, yo, like, I've only seen you on Instagram. It's so nice to meet you. Like, just that, I mean, yeah, granted that can happen in LA, but what if dude was from Nashville and I've never seen him? What if so-and-so, like, there was a large sense of community there. I just don't want to see it go away. Yeah. A reform is warranted. I don't understand secret committees just in general outside of the CIA. Let the CIA have it. I don't need to know.
You do understand the CIA is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is this you outing yourself as a CIA agent? That was pretty incredible.
Right now.
And by the way, Rory said in there some of the congratulations is performative. Of course it is, but I also think a quick anecdote. I remember riding in an Uber a number of years ago. I just always talk to everybody. I talk to my Uber drivers and probably annoying them, but I always give them 5 stars, so it's all good. But I talked to this guy who was a young Russian guy, maybe late 20s, early 30s. And I was asking about Russia, asking about LA, how long he's been here. And he said, I was like, what do you like about LA? And he's like, I like the weather. I like the food, and I love the fake smiles. And I was like, that's the I just didn't know he was telling a joke. I was like, what do you mean fake smiles? He's like, in Russia, we save smiles. We don't smile at stranger. We don't do this. We're just family. And he's just like, I love in LA that people will just smile at you. Even if he's like, how could you smile at me? You don't know me. He's like, I love the fake smiles. I love we might as well have positivity. Might as well put it out there first and see what happens. It was just a really interesting cultural, cultural thing. So the idea that we set up a system where every year, everybody congratulates each other and big ups each other, even if some of it's bullshit. I actually think that's kind of nice. I like the idea of pushing out positivity because, it's like all the studies that say if you smile, smiles are contagious. So even if you just force yourself to put a smile in your brain, you will actually get happier. Your cortisol will go down. You can do things that are performative that actually result in positivity. And I'm not saying this is the argument for the Grammys, but that is an aspect of this that I don't think is actually bad. Sorry, there's something else you want to chat about?
No, I love that. I love that. I was just thinking that smiling uses a lot more face muscles. So like over the long term, Russian faces will age less.
Yeah, but they won't be as happy. So fuck that.
Who knows? But happiness doesn't have to be.
Are you arguing against smiling right now?
Yeah. My brother did this to me like 15 years ago. My older brother was like, why don't you smile? He's like, uses more face muscles. I don't need to smile all the time to be happy. God. No, I love that shit. What do you mean?
What an angry response to it. I disagree.
He's a happy person. He's fine.
I bet he'd be happier if he smiled more.
Maybe. Let's give him a Grammys. I think there's other ways to control your cortisol and stress levels. And,
of course.
Sorry.
Anyway, I just think the idea of I think you're totally right that, having events that promote the idea of, people big upping each other, I think is a really wonderful thing.
Yeah, so and that's not what it is inherently. And it was all about performances and ads this time. And it sucks that it's turned into that. It sucks that everything's turned into that. The Super Bowl was more about that than the game. Like, it's a bummer that this is just the world that we live in. I'm just not down to completely rip down the system.
Yeah, I don't think we should get rid of
it's
complicated.
it's just complicated. And clearly, I'll just end the Grammy talk on this little anecdote that's in my head, which is, if we're not qualified to even discuss this, then we're probably not qualified to vote. Then I'm not sure who's qualified to discuss this or qualified to vote. We're making the records that people are voting on.
I think if you've been nominated for a Grammy at some point in your life, you get a say in this whole process. I think you are by definition a part of it.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
And by the way, like I said, I may totally shift my opinion on it. I reserve the right to evolve as a human with more information.
I'll say one more thing actually on the topic, because during the Grammys, I was on a text thread with Dennis and Dale. We did the Khalid album last 2 years ago. We were nominated and for Talk for Record of the Year, and that was the greatest thing. Like having a nomination, all done by the same team. Your homies are there.
That's beautiful. Winning with your friends, amazing.
And I what I'm about to say is, like, not winning the Record of the Year Grammy still felt like a huge celebratory moment.
When I said winning, I just meant doing great things. I didn't even think that you guys were nominated, but just like, having success with your friends. Sorry.
So my point, just to end the Grammy conversation, is that moment, the dinner beforehand with our families, 30, I don't remember, I think it was like 30 people at Manuela across the street with a bunch of champagne and great food. And then we didn't win. That's it. I don't need another Grammy nom or a win or anything, because that moment happened. And I genuinely mean that. And I don't know if it could ever be like that again. I mean, you can't just have your fly your parents out to the Grammys again for the first time.
For the first time, you'll never have the first time again. That's for sure.
You'll never have that. And I think that would it have been great if we won and there was an icing on the cake? Sure, but the cake was still plentiful. We didn't need that icing.
34 minutes and we got a food reference. It's good. It's good. That's about standard. That's about good. I guess that's enough Grammy talk. That's the last thing I will say is I watched a couple of performances. Bruno Mars can really fucking sing, can't he? That guy is like a 1 in 10 million talent of just a lifetime of singing and performing and studying the greats and recreating the greats and working in genres and pushing himself. And, obviously you see there's the photos out on the internet of him at like age 4 in an Elvis costume on stage, just with his dad. Like, that dude is so purely music. And I love the D Miles all over this album. And I think Anderson .Paak is at his best. Like, this is just, I'm really excited for that whole project, even if it's just sort of,
me too,
nostalgic throwback stuff. It's the best nostalgic throwback
let it be
possible. Those are the guys that should be doing it. I'm very excited. It's so ridiculous. It makes me laugh and smile in with total admiration. Boy, can he fucking sing. Holy
seriously.
All right, we got a bunch of questions other than Grammy stuff, which we just spent a half an hour on, which is nice.
That's fine. It happened.
I don't know. What are you feeling? Technical? Somebody asked about, actually, I was curious of this, vinyl. Do you listen to records? Do you have a record? Yeah. What do you think about vinyl generally? And you can answer that any way you want. I have a couple of thoughts, but vinyl is obviously it's coming back a lot in the last few years. It's become a nostalgic and retro way to listen to records, but there's also something cool and big and physical now that things have moved away from CDs. Mm-hmm. What do you think about vinyl?
Yeah, I never had a true affinity for it until the pandemic happened, and I got a nice vintage turntable and a good tube amp and some really good speakers, and I use it specifically to be a fan of music. I don't play records that I can touch. There's no way that I could work with the artist that I put on and listen to. It's truly for fanship, and that's something I was struggling with for a bunch of years. I think we've talked about this before. How to make
sure you remain a fan of music and have ways where you just are a fan, because it's nice to listen to your peers, but also you feel like you're in context. It's really good to have an outlet for music to make sure that you still feel like you're 10 or 15 or whatever, whenever you discovered music, to just be a fan.
And like you said, the physicality of it, you actually have to listen to it because it stops and you have to flip it, right? So you wind up listening more to the record than if you background music.
And you don't press. I mean, I guess on some record players you can press play and it automatically does it, but you actually go like.
I have to drop it on mine's from the 60s. It's an old Thorens turntable. It's fantastic. It's like a Swiss tank. It's fucking heavy. And I listen to records from earlier decades, from 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't think I've ever really hit the 90s in my collection or new decades of music. I don't think, I've gotten test pressings of vinyl of songs I've mixed. It doesn't sound as good on vinyl. Like it's just not made for it. The amount of low end isn't cut right for it. They're just churning them out versus
that's an important thing.
That understands that.
I want to let people know that for I was just say younger record makers, but people that don't know, the process of mastering for vinyl, you really have to have someone who's doing a very specific experienced mastering, because you're physically cutting a record, and it requires a different type of low end and different type of filtering and different amount of dynamic range and mastering.
Thinking about that, of course, the whole physicality of the record. So you'd put the singles on the first record track or two because you had the most headroom for low end and the thicker radius.
Because you physically, when you have more low end, you physically have wider.
The grooves are larger.
The grooves are larger. The size of the vinyl.
So that's where the singles at the top of the record came, right? Like that's there's history there in vinyl and why certain things have become ubiquitous in record making. Now it's for streaming reasons and it's changed, but it's coming from the same place, really.
If you put your master for streaming or for iTunes or whatever onto vinyl, it will sound like shit. Yeah, it has to be a very different master. So just to let people know that if they want to make vinyl versions of things, it's worth looking into that, because if you just throw the WAV file on there, it's going to sound bad.
Yeah, but I love vinyl for the purpose of sitting on my sofa, pressing play, hosting a dinner party, and having to go over there and flip the record while everybody's sitting gives me a break from the social, the conversation having at the table. I get to just go away for even 45 seconds for a pause, flip the record, come back. There's a lot of utility to the vinyl. I don't do it as often as I'd like to, if I'm being honest, because when I'm not working on records, I like to listen to podcasts. So,
me too.
But when I listen to records, it's not on the PMC MP3s that I have in the studio. Rarely, unless I hear something that's like I listened to the Silk Sonic record, the Bruno thing, like an Anderson thing, because I was just want to hear that Serbian mix because it sounded great to me. And so Josh and I press play on that. But when I listen to music as a fan, it's on vinyl on smaller speakers that are a bit more universal sounding. They're still PMCs. I got to be honest, but they're different. They're smaller.
There's been some fun monitor discussion on the Discord.
60s vinyl is someone were to buy a record player and listen to a 60s record, I think they would understand my mix philosophy a little bit more. The 60s had really big, fat, true low end.
For some
more
stuff,
dynamic in a lot of stuff.
What are some of your favorites? What do you when you're talking about big dynamic old 60s low end on vinyl specifically, what do you?
I'm thinking like Ethiopian jazz records.
Of course, all those that I listen to.
Yeah.
Anything? Can you call anything out? I'd be curious. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot about like we haven't talked about this, but
yeah, I can't think of name, but I mean Mulatu at Stockade. Just put Mulatu on earlier records like Tetseka. Can't think of the pronunciation of a lot of these names, to be real with you.
I love it. Well, that's a couple of good names.
It's just there's just something to it.
Yeah.
There's something to that. It's full body. There's transients. If you put it on your phone, it's still on Spotify. It just jumps out of your phone louder than other things. So I don't know. It's just really inspiring to hear full range sonically.
I like that idea of the outlet being for inspiration and just joy. It actually, you listening to 60s Ethiopian jazz records goes well in line with you spending 9 hours to make a meal for 4 people. It's the kind of like, if you don't have the constraints, how deep can you go? And it feels like
Turkish psych records Indonesian psych records from the 60s, 70s. They just have different low end. That's I have to get back to you on titles of these records.
Oh, there you go. One of my all-time favorite records.
Yeah, okay, that's the I don't believe the Ethiopics record is actually on vinyl. I don't think that was a compilation that came later of these earlier records, but there's
that's one of the artists you're talking about.
Yeah.
Mulatu Astake. All right, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
I have a record player and a bunch of vinyl, but I haven't set it up in this house I'm in because it's sort of a temporary spot and I don't have a good place for it. But I same sort of thing where I love putting them on as you know, just not in front of a screen. I mean, that's the biggest part of it for me. Not listening to music and triggering on a screen does something different psychologically. You can't visualize. You visualize differently because you're doing it all in your head. And obviously, we spend so much time listening to our own stuff or our peers or whatever on with a screen and with the same speakers. It's nice to have another setup to just listen and enjoy for inspiration.
You're just trying to be a fan again. I think I lost it.
Yeah. By the way, that's it's a larger topic, but that's something that happens to everybody. And if you're watching this, whoever you are, and you've lost your love for music because you're recording bands that you hate or you're working on things, like it's really, really important to figure out tactics for making sure you still love music, because then it just becomes a job. And, I had an interesting thing, and I may have said this on a stream before, but, I was doing a lot of engineering for producers, and there was a project I was on where I was I was recording lots of big rock electric guitars, and 2 weeks straight of like 10, 11 hours a day of just listening to loud, just cranked British high gain tube and comping and playing.
Talk about cortisol spikes.
Oh my God. And it wasn't adrenaline. Just that it was exhausting and I wasn't super passionate about it because I was being hired and doing a job and coming up, but I also could not, because I was so fatigued, I could not listen to music outside of it. I needed to have silence or podcast audio or whatever. And so for a few weeks, maybe even more like a month, I didn't find joy in music. And it was really scary to me. And I remember talking to the producer, and he actually sort of talked me through it and was like, here's some ways to think about it. And, it's also part of coming up is you got to have this experience, but it happens to all of us in various forms, not just if you're engineering loud guitars, but for all kinds of reasons. And making sure that you take time, another example of breaks, I suppose, take time to make sure you find joy in music, because otherwise, why the fuck you go work at a bank or something? Like, if you're not enjoying the process, there's no reason to be in this insane competitive industry and art form if you don't love it.
It's got to stem from that. We talked long and exhaustively about it on our last Conversations episode that dropped Monday. It's probably my favorite. Not because it was my birthday episode.
Yeah,
it was, but it wasn't very celebratory. We kind of got into the heart of, we kind of piggybacked off of what you and I talked about last week, the idea of stopping, the idea of like connection with artists and bandwidth. And I mean, I just, Rory was recalling, isolated moments in Ireland, like listening to Sonic Youth and these records that really, transported him, and kind of, it determines things for us in our life and who we become. We're talking about staring at paintings for an hour, and how, like, I used to go to museums and score hours staring at paintings with certain records. One of it, which was a Dredge record that we connected on El Cielo. It's like, you can even hear the writing on the paper. It's like a super interesting concept. And I used to go to museums and listen to that record. Like, I would lay on the floor in my bedroom. Even when I had a studio in Long Island, homies would go out drinking, whatever they were doing. I would lay in the middle of my control room with a sub only on, and put headphones on and listen to records with the sub bumping the floor, and not what I was working on, other records that were coming out. It was so connected. And I'm kind of wondering, are kids doing that today? Are kids actually that close to records that artists are putting out, or are they close to the Instagram persona that these people are putting out? Like, where's the line there? Are you like really listening to Travis Scott records and like, every lyric and his point of view on things? You're listening to the bass part down from the beginning because there's so much nuance. Like, are the records like this being made where you can actually deep dive into the record and like decide what part you're going to listen to on what time, you know, on what listen. Like we used to listen again to the bass line. Now we can take the piano part. Oh shit, there's a Rhodes that comes in the second verse and then like does an octave jump in the chorus. And like, that's how we as fans of music were connecting. You know, a lyric was a listen, melodies were listens, and remembering, like, is music being made at a level of depth right now?
I think it is. I think it is, but as always,
do you think it is on the same amount? Oh,
this is an interesting conversation. This is the did things used to be better conversation, which is a difficult one.
Not did things used to be better. Is there something lacking that needs to be brought back into the fold, into the reason behind the creation? It's not a golden age thinking question.
I think the answer is yes, in the sense that because the means of creation are so much broader now that anybody, you know, again, my favorite example, it's like if you have a laptop and you have GarageBand, you have the loop that they wrote Umbrella on that is the final drum loop. Like the ability to make big hit records, transcendent records, is not limited to commercial studios. So what I mean is that a lot of people are making records without the same sort of depth, but there are still lots of people making records. I mean, look, Silk Sonic might be a great example of those guys. You know, those guys aren't in their 40s or something. Like those are young dudes making amazing records that have huge amount of depth. But I do think it's worth fighting for, because I just as a
humans, are humans, did they have the bandwidth, the space, the ability to shut out the noise, to go into their bedroom and put headphones on and be sucked into that world without a screen? It's definitely harder. So what I'm saying, but the same people that would be listening to them or peers are making the music in the same fashion, where there are other equally.
Things, yeah. So how
by default could they be doing it, is what I'm saying.
I think it's certainly true that the resources I had to feel less alone in the world when I was 13, I had far fewer resources in terms of just give me a dopamine hit, let me connect to something, let me distract myself. So much of that was music, because it was, you know, it was really essentially pre-internet, certainly before phones and before iPhones and before social media. So the outlet was very different. So I sat in my bedroom listening to records over and over and over, because that's what was available to me. So I think in that sense, you're absolutely right that the art form has changed because of it. And I guess I lament some of that, but I'm also just nostalgic for the way I grew up, and that's fine. But the other thing that's really interesting is that I think the pandemic has thrown a crazy wrench into this, but Travis Scott's a really interesting example, because I don't think of Travis Scott as an artist that, I'm sure many people do this, they sit in their bedroom and listen by themselves, but I think of Travis Scott as a bunch of people at a house party. And we've lost that for the last year, and I cannot wait until there's enough vaccine and enough comfort. I mean, obviously people are still out there, young people partying because they can't really get COVID, but or not as much. But this idea that we can go back out, I think there's going to be a crazy renaissance for live events and music that speaks to that. It's been very weird. Like, what were the big songs of this last year that we all listened to together? And the answer is fucking none, because we weren't together. So this idea that the songs that you play when you're, you know, in the car with your friends, you're at a restaurant, you're at the club, you go to a show, you're at a house party, any of these sorts of things, we've not had that. So music is in a very strange place because of that. But
what a great opportunity to release the records that would make you think deeply.
Make those,
because you're already in your house doing nothing or staring at a screen.
And are those things going to be as interesting, or not even interesting, more interesting, but are they going to be as addictive and magnetic as just getting likes and watching another YouTube video? I find it very difficult. I go on YouTube rabbit holes all the time.
It's not as gratifying.
But I think it's worth fighting for. I think it's worth pushing for.
I think so. I think it is. That's why I think it's worth talking about. I think that's why we all did it, and it makes it harder to remember why we did it when people aren't connecting deeply to the things that we're working on. And some of that is just, it's not deep music. Most of it is that. I mean,
which, by the way, I'm fine with. I love the idea that everybody in their bedroom can just make a song in 10 seconds. I would I'd rather 100 times as many people be able to make music that they love and play it for their friends and dance around in 20 minutes than not. But it certainly devalues in a grand sense the ability to make really intense, deep records, and we'll fight for it, and that's fine. But I don't. You know,
I don't fully agree, and I want to I want to talk more on that.
Yeah.
I agree with you, like the sentiment of, yeah, everyone gets to do it. That's great. But everyone getting to do something diminishes the amount of great in
the percentage
ratio.
goes down.
Yeah.
I just don't care about that. I still, you know, it doesn't bother me. I have this grand theory that once recording technology came out, this is like, you know, 20s, 30s, 40s, it narrowed the ability for people to have communal music experiences. It became commodified. It became physicalized. Like all of a sudden music wasn't enough, because it used to be pre World War II, you know, you can find a great upright piano because there were just thousands and tens of thousands, because every home had a piano, and not that everybody played music all the time. I'm not some, you know, I don't, not golden age type stuff, but there really was no technology available. This is like pre-radio, or even in the radio era, there wasn't recorded music before like 1940. And so,
yeah, you had to go to live performance.
Yeah. Or you had to do it in the home. You sang songs like the American folk tradition, acoustic guitars. I mean, there's so much music that was so much broader. And if you go back tens of thousands of years to tribal times, singing and dancing is just a part of life. I'm excited that the means of making music is potentially going in that direction, even though it's obviously internet and a new era. But I love the idea that even if it's all bad, who gives a shit about that? Gets back to the Grammy discussion. Who cares if you think it's bad? If people are enjoying themselves and making stupid beats on like, that's awesome. I love that shit. I'd much rather that people do that than not. Even if the like quote unquote great music that I really connect to is a much lower percentage, I don't give a shit. But you know, that's my opinion.
Yeah, you're right. We have other things to connect to.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I
love the idea of thinking about the fact that it was probably a highlight of those people's time to sit around the piano with like the one person in the household that was musically talented, right, or skilled. And they sat around and they sang, and everybody sang in harmony, no matter if they were in tune or not. Like, there's definitely like the movie version of it where everyone sings beautifully, but you know that's not the case. Like, it's just a big hug. The third sister definitely doesn't have pitch. But she's still singing because it feels good.
The third singer is not singing a good third harmony. She's singing awkward tritones.
Yeah. And now our version of that, you know, now is going out to a club and forgetting all, you know, all your past regrets and your work day and you know. And
then right now we can't do that, which is crazy.
And we can't do that. But again, I feel like that's a more of a reason to have meaningful, nuanced, lyrical content that are making people feel good and ponder lives and decisions yet to come. And I guess, like you're saying, I mean, like, I don't care if that exists. Sure. I mean, I have avenues to find these kinds of conversations happening outside of music, but music and poetry, you know, used to exist closer to each other, and we can find the answers or the words for our everyday problems in these songs. And I'm, you know, again, mixing hundreds of songs a year. Like I connect like 1 out of 10 emotionally, if that. And I'm just wondering, like, where did that, you know, could that happen again? And I want it to, because I think kids will get something from it. Young people will get something from it. Adults will get stuff from it. I don't think it's something to say I don't give a fuck about as much as like, I know that's not like what you're saying. I think it's nice that there's more access. I think it's nice. Do I think it's great? No, I don't think it's great.
Yeah. And we disagree on it, and that's fine. I think it's amazing. I want everybody to make beats. I want everybody to make bad records. I've made mostly bad records. I want lots of other people to have that experience.
I want people to make bad records until they make good records. And if they keep making bad records for a decade, they might want to do something else.
Yeah.
So that they can live a happy,
they don't have to be
life.
Yeah, they don't have to be professionals, but they can put it on their social media, whatever. And not that we should get into this conversation because it's a longer one, and smarter people than us have had more pointed conversations on it. But this idea that we are simultaneously getting short attention span, instant dopamine hit, instant, and yet maybe the most influential media person in the world is a guy who has 3-hour long form, one-on-one, unbroken conversations. Yes. So, and then the same thing with TV. Like, it was sitcoms for a long time, but now in addition to like Instagram videos and viral and TikTok, there's also like the people, Netflix will release an entire season, 10 hours of one story arc, and people love that too. for us, I mean, there's a few thousand people across platforms that listen to the two of us talk for an hour about whatever we want, because we're trying to go deeper and have. So I think there's a hunger on both sides, and I think it's all fine. I mean, it is what it is.
I think it's all fine.
I think it's all fine. It is what it is. I want to say we just got a few minutes left. I know people are often asking technical questions on the chat, technical questions. The Discord, as I keep hyping up, is amazing for that. We're up to about, 220 people on there, and people really helping each other out. We got some really seasoned veterans on there. Kian's on there. There's a few other people that are really helping people with technical questions and mixing questions and speakers and building studios and instruments. Is really great stuff. So John and I tend to go, if you're new to this stuff, tend to go more on the philosophical and the emotional, and then not that that's not on the Discord too, but more technical stuff can really be answered on the Discord or be pointed to where we've already talked about it. Let's see. That being said, there's a couple of things I would want to throw at you. Oh, can you talk about Dolby Atmos? There's actually two different people that have asked about that. I don't know what it is, but somebody's like, I'm a mixer in LA. Is that something worth investing in? Do you see that being a thing? What is Dolby Atmos? Do you know about that? Can you?
Yeah, not for 3 minutes.
Not for 3 minutes. Can you give
Dolby Atmos is surround sound mixing.
Oh, sorry, real quick, Discord. There's a link in my bio, both the Live with Matt Rad and the Matthew Rad. It's an open invite. People can just hit it up there. Sorry.
Can't talk about Dolby Atmos right now. Let's talk about it when I'm doing it.
Okay. It's some new surround format that's great.
To answer the actual question, do I think it's something worth investing in? I don't know just yet. Am I investing in it? Yes. Okay. I'm doing it for different reasons. I'm doing it because I want to have fun and I want a new creative platform to express my abilities as a sonic shaper and world builder sonically. I did one mix and I fell in love with the idea that I could actually sit inside the record, and I don't mean that abstractly. Like I'm like literally. Yes, like I already tried to mix 3D and deep. That's my aesthetic. I don't over compress. As we know, we'll get into next week. I know. I try to let you feel the back wall and feel the verb tails and give you a space inside a room that you can, jump into, like a great deep painting by Monet. Not comparing myself to Monet. That was just a riff on the.
You're my Monet. You're my sonic Monet.
But in Atmos, that came very naturally to me. And I've always been intrigued by it. So I'm going to do it as a fun platform. It is a very expensive upgrade. So I wouldn't do it if you're thinking on a return on investment in the next year or two. I'm doing it for different reasons. So I'll just state that.
That's a good answer.
Clearly.
All right. Well, man, that would be a long answer. I don't think I want to do that one yet.
What is it?
No. I'm gonna save it. Save it. Because you'll go off on it. Let's call it here. We've done an hour.
Wait, can you say it so we can preface for another time? Let's have a little bit of a cliffhanger. Episode cliffhangers.
What as a mixer makes a producer fun to work with?
Great question.
It's a great question.
Next time on Live with Matt Rad.
Shout out Alex, who asked that a few weeks ago. He didn't get to it, but that's a great one. Next time, yeah. I'm going to be on the Discord after this, chatting. It's great over there. Lots of good people over there sharing. John, love you. Good to see your face.
Love you. I'm gonna go mix a record.
Sounds good, man. Bye, guys.
Bye.